All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, we do have several of those who are in attendance this evening who would like to participate in this virtual town hall in a second language, which is what you are seeing now. The slide on the screen is directions on how you can participate and access this virtual town hall via a different language. I'm going to wait here about 10 more seconds and then we'll get started. All righty. I would like to thank you all so much for being with us this evening for our final scheduled town hall for the Paid Family and Medical Leave Insurance Program. We appreciate you taking time this evening to join us to help offer some ideas, identify issues, make suggestions, or raise any concerns you may have relating to the program's development. With us today, we have members of our self-employed and independent contractor work group, including Caitlin Critton and Jen Hayes, Rick Heineken with our benefits work group. We also have Kelly Afoni with our contribution and small employers work group, Jason Boley with our communications team, Lois Williams, Lily Hogue, and Leslie Chartier with the PFMLI leadership team, and then Sonia will be interpreting tonight's virtual town hall for those that would like to access it via Spanish. A little rundown on how this evening's meeting is going to go. We're going to start with a brief introduction of the PFMLI program by our policy manager, Lois Williams. Then Caitlin will provide an update on where the program is when it comes to our self-employed and independent contractors work group. When Caitlin is done, we're going to go ahead and start on questions. We did have a number of you that had sent us your questions or comments before the town hall. We also had a number of questions that have been asked at all of our previous town halls. So we're going to address those questions or comments first, and we'll then move on to those submitted during the meeting. Since today's session is intended to focus mostly on self-employed and independent contractors, we may filter questions related to other topics, but we'll get to as many of them today as possible. I would also encourage you, if you have not done so, to watch all of our previous town halls on contributions, equivalent plans, benefits, and small employers, as they may answer some of the questions that you have. Those town halls were recorded and have been posted on the PFMLI website under the Town Halls tab. You can also submit any of your questions, comments, or concerns by using the question and answer tab at the bottom of this screen. Please feel free to submit those anytime during the meeting if you are listening. Now, if you are listening and participating by phone, you can email your questions to paidfamilyandmedicalleave@oregon.gov. And again, feel free to use that Q&A tab at the bottom, and please submit those in either Spanish or English. Now, just as we've done in all prior town halls, we are recording this town hall, and it will be posted to the PFMLI webpage within a few days following this event. Now, one thing I do want to emphasize is that because PFMLI is still very much in its early stages and is still being developed, there may be a lot of questions that we do not have the answers to at this time, and it may be some time before we have answers to those questions. We're really using this time to listen to you, gather questions, comments, or concerns that will help us build and implement a program that works for all Oregonians. Again, thank you guys so much for joining us this evening. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lois Williams. Lois?
Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to hear your input. Your questions will help us identify areas that we need to delve into further in order to provide guidance with better education and outreach over the next couple of years. So I'm going to quickly provide an overview of the new program. Now, most countries around the world have paid family leave programs of some kind. The United States is one of only a few that don't offer this type of leave at the federal level. Oregon's paid family and medical leave insurance program was passed into law in 2019. Oregon is joining 8 other states, plus Washington, D.C., in offering this program. Of those other states that have paid family leave programs, 4 evolved from those states' existing disability insurance programs. Of the states with more recently enacted programs, Washington State and Washington, D.C.'s, those 2 plans began paying benefits earlier this year. Massachusetts and Connecticut will each follow in the next couple of years, and then Oregon's program will start paying benefits beginning in January 2023. When House Bill 2005 was passed in 2019, certain timelines were included. The bill became effective in September 2019, and it requires the Employment Department to provide reports back to the legislature on its implementation of the program at various stages. Other timelines were included, such as administrative rules are to be adopted by September of 2021. Paid family medical leave contributions begin to be collected from employers and employees in January 2022, and then benefits will be available beginning in January 2023. The legislature funded the implementation of the program with a general fund loan. That loan needs to be paid back in January 2023, and the program will be self-funded from the contributions into the PFMLI fund from then on. So the program provides for 3 types of leave. Family leave, which provides paid time off to bond with a child during the first year after birth, adoption or foster care placement, as well as to care for a family member with a serious health condition. There's also medical leave, which provides paid time off for one's own serious health condition. And then safe leave, which provides paid time off to respond to issues relating to domestic violence, harassment, stalking, or sexual assault. So here's a lot of aspects of the Oregon program. Eligible employees will be able to take up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave. They may take 2 more weeks of paid leave for pregnancy, childbirth, and related conditions. Employees may take an additional 4 weeks of unpaid leave for events that are also covered under Oregon's Family Leave Act, also known as OFLA. The weekly benefit amount is based on an eligible employee's prior earnings from a base year or an alternate base year. Employees who made average earnings up to 65% of the state's average weekly wage will receive full wage replacement. Employees who made more than 65% of the state's average weekly wage will receive an additional amount, but benefits are capped at a maximum of 120% of the statewide average weekly wage. There's also a minimum benefit amount equal to 5% of the statewide average weekly wage. Several job protection provisions are included in the program. For example, at the time an employee returns from paid leave, they must be returned to an equivalent or similar position. Also, their seniority is not affected by taking leave. Employers may not discriminate against an employee who inquires about or who takes paid family, medical, or safe leave. And employers must continue to provide health care benefits while the employee is on paid leave. Both employers and employees will make contributions into the program starting in January 2022. Employee wages up to $132,900 per year will be subject to contributions. That maximum amount is indexed for inflation each year. The contribution rate itself is the same for all employers, and it will be set once each year by the Employment Department, and it is capped at no more than 1% of wages. Of that maximum 1% rate, contributions are split between employees who will pay 60% of the rate, and employers who will pay 40% of the rate. Small employers, which are those who have less than 25 employees, do not have to pay the employer portion of contributions, but they may choose to do so, and more to come on this on the next slide. Employers can choose to have their own plan rather than participate in the state plan. If they choose that route, their plan must provide benefits at least equal to that of the state plan or better. Employers will pay a fee of up to $250 to the department to evaluate if their plan meets that equivalent standard. These employers and their employees do not pay contributions into the state plan, but instead contribute to that employer's plan. Benefits for those employees are paid under that employer's equivalent plan. We are working currently on administrative rules for situations where workers have more than one job, with potentially 2 or more different types of coverages or plans. An equivalent plan under one employer and maybe the state plan under a different employer. Or where a worker has 2 jobs and each employer has their own equivalent plan. On the prior slide, I mentioned that small employers, again, those with less than 25 employees, can choose not to pay the employer's 40% share of the contributions. If they do pay that portion, though, they can then apply for small employer assistance grants that can help offset the cost of hiring temporary replacement workers and other related costs, like overtime for other employees while someone is out on leave. The grants are up to $3,000 and can be requested for up to 10 employee leave occurrences per year. House Bill 2005 included a requirement for the department to establish an advisory committee. Their role is to advise the director on implementation, administration, and rulemaking for the new paid family medical leave program. They consist of 9 members. The paid family medical leave director, who chairs the committee, 4 individuals who represent employee interests, and 4 individuals who represent employer interests, one of which represents small employers. This group has been meeting monthly for almost a year now. With the help of the advisory committee, we've established 5 work groups to bring in even more perspectives on developing the program. The equivalent plans work group has been discussing how the application process will work, along with identifying processes for renewing, withdrawing, and terminating equivalent plans. They're also going to discuss what reporting processes these employers will be asked to do, and will help develop rules for when disputes arise between employees and employers with equivalent plans. The contributions work group is exploring who must make contributions, how to define wages, and how employers will report their information and submit their payments. They'll also take a look at areas involving the sale or transfer of a business and any interest and penalty issues. The small employers work group is determining how and when to count employees, because they have to have fewer than 25, and developing those small employer assistant grant processes. This work group is also clarifying the job protection provisions I previously discussed that affect all employees and employers regardless of size. And then another work group is the self-employed independent contractors work group, what we're talking about tonight. The paid family medical leave legislation allows self-employed individuals to elect coverage under the state's program. They must participate for up to 3 years. or longer, but their contributions are based on their taxable self-employment income rather than wages. This work group is exploring how an individual makes this election, how the contribution rate will be applied to an individual's self-employment income, how often they will remit payment, determining whether they must have earned that income in Oregon, and then collaborating with our next team to determine how benefits will be calculated for self-employed individuals. The last group I'll mention is the benefits work group that will address issues related to eligibility, applying for benefits, the computation and payment of benefits, and intermittent leave. If you don't take leave all at one chunk of time, but is spread out over time, we need to have processes in place to account for that. So before I turn this over now to Caitlin for more details about the topic of self-employed and independent contractors, I just want to thank you again for participating tonight. We're capturing all of your input here, so the questions you ask, we are capturing. But you will have additional opportunities to provide input as we begin posting draft administrative rules on our website over the next couple of months. Our first batch is posted there now. And then again, you'll have more chance to comment during our formal rulemaking processes throughout the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Lois. Lois just provided us a great overview of PFMLI and the provisions established for self-employed individuals. Oregon's law offers self-employed individuals and independent contractors the opportunity to elect for coverage, if they choose, in order to participate in the state-run PFMLI program. The statute states that the self-employed individual must file a notice of election in writing with the director of the employment department and contribute to the Paid Family and Medical Leave Insurance Fund established under ORS 657B 430 in the manner described by the director by rule. We launched our self-employed work group in August, and we have members on that work group from the PFMLI Advisory Committee and those representing self-employed individuals and independent contractors. While the statute includes an overview of the election requirements, there is a lot of process and policy development that we still must do over the next year prior to launching the election application process for self-employed individuals. We have divided our work into 3 priority areas, and within each area, we are focusing on the most important aspects in order to meet our timeline and to make sure that self-employed individuals and independent contractors have enough time to decide if they want to participate and elect for coverage under the Paid Family and Medical Leave Insurance Program. We started our work focusing on policy questions around the election process and the election requirements, and also the department review of the election itself. And we have continued our focus to include research on defining self-employment for PFMLI, determining what income will be used when determining the contribution rates, determining the benefit amounts, what written documentation we will need from self-employed individuals, what the termination of an election looks like. And our next priority is to look at policies relating to appeals, re-elections, erroneous payments, quarterly reporting, and contribution payments, which we're just getting started on. I thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts, because as it was said earlier, we're still working through so much of this, and so we value the input and the questions and comments that we're going to get from you today. Hopefully, we'll also be able to answer some questions today for you too.
Thank you, Caitlin and Lois, for that brief overview on the Paid Family and Medical Leave Insurance Program, as well as the Self-Employed Work Group. We're going to go ahead and turn over to questions. We're going to, again, address those that have already been submitted to us and we'll then turn to those submitted during this evening's town hall. Again, you can submit those questions at the Q&A tab at the bottom of this Zoom. So this first question is for Caitlin. And Caitlin, is there or will there be a fee for a self-employed individual to make an election for coverage?
Thank you, Dean. The law does not describe any fee in relation to making an election. After our team's research and analysis, we have determined that there will not be a fee for self-employed individuals to make an election for PFMLI coverage.
Caitlin, this question also for you. What is the time frame commitment once a self-employed individual elects PFMLI coverage?
Thank you. The statute states that a self-employed individual may elect to be covered under this chapter for a period of not less than 3 years. It says that the individual must file a notice of election in writing with the director of the employment department and contribute to the paid family and medical leave insurance fund in the manner described by the director by rule. Their election will become effective on the day they file. And in addition, the individual must agree to supply any information concerning their taxable income that the director deems necessary.
Caitlin, also for you, have you determined, or have we, the PFMLI, determined the contribution rate for self-employed individuals?
We have not yet determined the contribution rate for self-employed individuals. We do know that the self-employed individual who has elective coverage will contribute to the fund with a contribution rate that may not exceed 1% of the individual's taxable income. Our economist is currently analyzing available data to make projections to help us set this rate.
Thank you, Caitlin. This question is for Lois. And Lois, when will the contribution rate be finalized?
Thanks, Dean. That's a great question. Contributions are going to start on January 1, 2022, and we aim to have the initial rate well in advance so that employers and employees and self-employed individuals can be prepared. The initial rate is going to be set so that by January 1, 2023, 1 year later, there is funding available to repay that general fund loan and cover benefit payments for 6 months. By statute, we know that the rate cannot exceed 1% of wages or income for self-employed individuals. So it cannot exceed 1%, but the rate hasn't been set yet. Our economist is currently analyzing available data to make projections and to set the initial rate. It will be publicized well in advance of January 1, 2022.
Thank you, Lois. This next question, this is actually for Rick. And Rick, are the hours that are not used in a year for PFMLI rolled over to the next year? And then is there a limit year to year where you have to start over?
Thank you, Dean. When a covered individual establishes their claim, it allows them to have 12 weeks of paid PFMLI during a 1-year period. At the end of that year, the benefits available will end. None of the unused weeks are allowed to be rolled over. PFMLI benefits are an insurance program, not a bank of hours or earnings. These benefits are available when an individual meets the eligibility requirements.
Thank you, Rick. Caitlin, back to you. What is the definition of taxable income for self-employed individuals? And then upon what taxable income does a self-employed individual calculate their percentage?
Thank you, Dean. This is a question. It's a great question, and it's one we're working on right now. We have not yet finalized our definitions of taxable income for self-employed individuals and independent contractors for PFMLI, but we have begun our research and we have some general thoughts from what we do know. While the statute does not define taxable income, it does provide a definition for self-employed individuals as an individual who has self-employment income as defined in section 1402B of the Internal Revenue Code as amended and on effect on December 31st, 2018. or an independent contractor as defined in ORS 670-600. That section, 1402B of the Internal Revenue Code, defines self-employment income in general as the net earnings from self-employment derived by an individual during a taxable year. And then those net incomes, the net earnings from self-employment is defined as the gross income derived by an individual from any trade or business carried on by the individual, less the allowable deductions, plus the individual's distributed share of income, minus the loss from any trade, business, partnership in which the individual is a member. So that was a lot to say that is what we know at this point, but we'll be defining that hopefully as soon as we can with our work group.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Yeah.
This one also for you. Will there be specifics for ownership of a business? Will owners of the business or company be labeled as an employee who will need to contribute to the PFMLI benefits?
Yeah, we have gotten this question a few times as well. And so we realize that there are many different ways that business owners and self-employed individuals receive income from their companies. We are working through each of these different types of businesses, and it seems that the answer to this question is going to vary and that it's not going to be the same depending on the business structure. Generally, if the business owner receives wages or a salary from their business or their company, they're considered an employee, and those wages will or are going to be subject. The owner will be required to contribute to paid family medical leave insurance as a employee then upon those wages if they are paid as an employee of their business. Additionally, if an employer or if an owner of a business or a company receives wages from the business or corporate officer or shareholder dividends, then yes, those wages are subject to PFMLI. We have just posted our first set of the draft administrative rules that Lois mentioned earlier on our website, and those rules are focused on contributions, and one of them clarifies that corporate officer and shareholder dividends are wages for the PFMLI program. If a business owner or a self-employed individual does not receive wages or corporate officer or shareholder dividends, then they're probably considered self-employed. And if they wanted to participate, they could make an election for coverage under this opportunity to elect as a self-employed individual.
And Caitlin, this one also for you. How long does an individual need to contribute in order to utilize paid family and medical leave insurance?
Yes, so we are still working through all of the specifics on this question as well. Paid family and medical leave insurance benefits will be available to a self-employed individual who both elects for coverage and contributes to the fund in the amount determined by the director during their base year or their alternative base year. At this point, we're interpreting that to mean that the self-employed individual must be up to date on all contribution payments in order to be eligible for benefits, but we haven't determined if there will be any other or additional requirements or timeframes added to that. When an individual does take leave, the weekly benefit amount available to the individual will be prorated according to the contributions that they have made in that base year.
Thank you, Caitlin. Now, while these next about 4 questions are not directly related to self-employed individuals, we received a question about really how employee notification is going to work and have received these a couple of times. And so this first question is for Rick. And Rick, how will the department validate that the employee provided proper notice to the employer? And how will the employer know if the employee has been approved by the state?
Thank you very much, Dean. PFMLI has not yet decided on the level of communication we'll have with employers once the claim for benefits has been submitted. We do anticipate that there will be some contact directly with employers whose employees have requested leave, but the verification of leave notice will be one of the items covered in that communication.
Rick, this question also for you. How often can individuals apply for PFMLI benefits once they have elected coverage?
Once an individual elects PFMLI coverage, they are considered a covered individual. Under the law, a covered individual may qualify for up to 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave insurance benefits per benefit year for the leave taken for any of the following purposes in any combination. And once again, those are family leave, medical leave, or safe leave. A covered individual may qualify for up to 2 additional weeks of benefits for conditions that are related to pregnancy, childbirth, or a related medical condition, including but not limited to lactation.
Thank you, Rick. This one, Caitlin, back to you. What will happen with self-employed individuals who elect coverage and then choose to terminate their coverage after contributing without ever taking leave? Can they get those contributions back?
Thank you, Dean. While we're still researching certain provisions in the statute around the portability of benefits, and if anything in that section applies to self-employed individuals, it's our general understanding that if a self-employed individual chooses to terminate their election, they're no longer eligible to take leave under PFMLI, and they will not be able to get a refund of any contributions made, even if they don't ever use the program. Similarly to other insurance programs like health, home, or auto, individuals who choose to participate will be paying premiums or contributions in order to have the coverage if they need it, but they can't get those contributions back if they do not end up using it.
Caitlin, this one also for you. What does the reporting and contribution schedule look like for self-employed individuals?
Yes, we don't have this determined yet either, but we do understand that self-employed individuals have different needs based upon their businesses and their circumstances than maybe typical businesses or employers, and that we've received some recommendations to try to allow for options within the contribution schedule or within our reporting schedule to have alternatives to a typical quarterly reporting or quarterly contribution schedule. So we're reviewing those recommendations right now in order to make a determination, but we would love any input, and we would appreciate input from you guys. If you're interested in electing for coverage, what sort of reporting and contribution schedules might work or would align best with the business practices that you guys currently have?
Caitlin, another question that we've definitely gotten a number of times, and it's important that we talk about it here again. And what are the similarities between short-term disability and the paid family and medical leave insurance program?
Yes. Oregon's paid family and medical leave insurance program provides benefits to individuals when they need to take leave due to family leave, medical leave, or safe leave. Short-term disability typically covers injuries and illnesses that render an individual unable to do their job for a short period of time. So short-term disability programs could potentially overlap with the medical leave aspect of PFMLI, but they do not typically cover the family leave or the safe leave that is covered under our law. Paid family and medical leave, the medical leave portion is specifically for serious health conditions or pregnancy, and so some less serious medical conditions that might typically be covered under a short-term disability plan, they may not be covered under PFMLI.
Thank you, Caitlin. And this last question actually for Kelly. And Kelly, does the program cover staffing agencies or employment agencies?
Thank you, Dean. It does. So when an employment agency is acting as an employer, then they would pay employer contributions and their employees would be eligible for leave under this program. The employment agency would also be responsible for maintaining employment records and really filling the role of an employer.
Thank you, Kelly. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for your great insight to these questions. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Lily Hogue, who's with our PFMLI leadership She's been monitoring the questions that have been submitted so far in the Q&A tab there at the bottom. And again, continue to do that throughout the remainder of tonight's virtual town hall. And so she's going to go ahead and facilitate those. Lily?
Hi, good evening, everyone. We're so glad you can be here tonight. Y bienvenidos a los hispanohablantes, que estamos muy contentos que están aquí con nosotros. So we actually have some questions first that I'd like to ask Lois, if that's all right. I've been seeing in the chat that, could you just define how will someone know if they're self-employed or if they're an independent contractor?
That is a great question. And I will start by saying we hope to put out a lot of information in advance of our program so that people do understand if they are being compensated as an independent contractor or an employee. There are currently laws in Oregon that define independent contractor for various programs. And we will be looking first to see how does the employment department define independent contractor or self-employed. And it has to do with items such as how much control the employer has over setting the direction for the work and when work will be performed and how it will be performed. We are taking a look at whether our program should adopt those same guidelines or if we need to put them in a different rule with any modifications. So we're not there yet, but someone should absolutely work with their, their employer or the person who has hired them to confirm what their employment status is and that it follows the law, so that there is no confusion later on as to whether or not someone is an employee covered under the program making contributions, or whether they are a self-employed independent contractor who can make the election to participate if they want to.
Thank you. And I think that rolls nicely into the next question that comes from the chat, which is for Caitlin, which is folks are wondering, so when they say the money doesn't roll over, when we said that it doesn't, the time doesn't roll over, we're just speaking about self-employed people, right? Can you describe a little bit more about how that works?
I think I need you to repeat the question, if you could,
So
or rephrase it.
Or, and it might, so one of the things you answered was, if people put in money into the program as a self-employed or independent contractor, so your employer is not putting in for you, which I'm repeating because I'm hearing a lot from folks that I think might be confused. So there's employers in Oregon will be required to provide paid family and medical leave for employees through this program at the Oregon Employment Department. And all of us will contribute as employees and employers, except for employers who have less than 25 employees. But their employees will still be allowed to take the time if they are eligible to. However, in other states and other places, people who are self-employed or independent contractors have not always been able to use programs like this. You are not automatically included in the program. And so tonight we're talking about being included in that program and electing coverage, which means choosing to be a part of paid family and medical leave. And so Caitlin is answering questions, and our whole team is answering questions about how if you are self-employed, how will you be engaged with the program? And so I think I'm sort of answering one question is to say that if you are an employee who works for an employer, it doesn't roll over like that. It's something that you're always contributing through payroll as an employee and that you have access to. It is different for self-employed people. So could you remind us, Caitlin, of how it will work? So they will opt into the program, and then what happens again?
Yes, thank you, Lily. So I think that, just to clarify what I heard you say, and then also give the answer, there are differences, but there are also similarities in that we're trying to make the processes and that the things like benefits and time rolling over and those sorts of things align with what the program looks like for employees once an individual does elect for coverage. So self-employed individuals have the opportunity or the option to elect if they choose to, and they will be contributing based upon their taxable income. And they will be making contributions throughout the time, so throughout a year, so that they have the wages in their base year. I say wages, the income in their base year, for us to look back at in order for them to make a claim. So it is similar to an employee's contributions in that way. And I think what you were saying is that self-employed individuals are not required to do this, and that it is then that option to elect.
Thank you. I was looking at the Q&A. I got stuck in between. So, Caitlin, this one is also for you. So, what happens if a self-employed individual goes bankrupt or stops being self-employed during their 3-year election requirement?
Yes, this is a great question. The statute specifically calls out and provides provisions for self-employed individuals if they do become bankrupt. And so the law allows for self-employed individuals who have elected coverage to terminate their coverage on the date of filing a voluntary or involuntary bankruptcy petition. The self-employed individual's elective coverage terminates on the day that they provide the department with documentation to support that bankruptcy and that they file written notice with the director. Additionally, the statute requires that the director establish rules around allowing individuals to terminate their coverage for other reasons. And one of those that's included is the change of status, of the change of employment status. And we've just started doing our research on this to see what it's going to look like and what those allowable change of employments would be for a self-employed individual. But there definitely are those provisions called out in the statute so that if something happens that's adjusting their employment so that they're no longer self-employed or they are bankrupt, that there is the ability for them to terminate. And we're interpreting that to be within that 3-year requirement, that there is that ability if they were to go bankrupt during that time for them to terminate their coverage.
Thank you. And I actually have a great follow-up for you from the chat here. So somebody's saying self-employed people sometimes have years when they have very little net income. If that ends up being their base year, they might suffer because their PFMLI, their paid family medical leave insurance benefit, will be so reduced. Have there been discussions about averaging more years of net income or how to deal with this problem?
So that is great. We've discussed this and we've started looking at other states and how they deal with this issue. There's some that have kind of like a minimum that an individual needs to make in order to elect. And if they make under that in a future year, it goes to that minimum for what their contribution rate is, even if that's not how much an individual made. The idea of, I can't remember how you worded it, but maybe combining or averaging is a really great one. And I think it highlights to me that if we can get these ideas or feedback about how to deal with these situations, because they are so special and unique to self-employed individuals, it might be something that we haven't considered before. And so if we can get this feedback in through these Q&As or through email, it will really help our work groups work as we're coming up with various options.
Thank you. And what I hear you saying is that we are a brand new division and a brand new program that won't really be fully up and running until 2023, though we will start taking contributions in 2022. And that means that right now we're having our first ever self-employed town hall. And we are so glad you are asking these questions. And you might notice that we don't have all the answers yet, but keep asking, please. The next one is for Lois. So if somebody's asking if this covers people who are employed in Mexico because they're part of an international business that is centered here in Oregon.
That's a great question. The Oregon program includes language that it's designed for people who perform service in Oregon. And so for the employees that are part of the program, we look to see where do they do the work. Now, I'm going to just nod at Caitlin because her team of self-employed is looking at that same question in relation to self-employed individuals. If their business is here and they're performing their work here in Oregon, that's what we want to be measuring in some way. If they leave the state and perform that business outside the state, is it incidental to the fact that they're mostly in Oregon? And we don't have the answers to that one either, but the work group is taking a look at this very issue of place of performance. Where is the business performed?
Thank you. And one more for you, Lois. Will non-life-threatening chronic illness be included under paid family and medical leave insurance definition of serious health condition?
Well, the definition of serious health condition is covered in statute, and so it is something that's pretty serious. If it's chronic and ongoing and it meets that definition currently that's in statute that we refer to, and I'm sorry, I don't have that statute number in front of me, and a medical professional certifies that that is a serious health condition, then it would qualify. So some chronic conditions don't qualify because they're not serious enough. They're chronic, but it might not be serious. So we are following that definition that's currently in statute that other Oregon programs use for Oregon Family Leave Act. And we are tied in statute to that same definition.
Thank you, Lois. So one of the things I hear you saying is that this law, which is the same word as statute, is that this law means that we also have to work with other laws that already exist in Oregon and in the United States. And so by creating this law for people who work primarily in Oregon, we're really only allowed to cover people who primarily work in Oregon, and there are some things that change. There are some ways that people are able to work other places, but for the most part, this is about our state. And Caitlin, I have a question for you. So I think the big question is, why would a self-employed individual want to elect and contribute to this insurance program?
That's a great one. And it is complicated based on individual circumstances. We know that the statute opens up, so our law opens up with this description of why PFMLI is needed in Oregon, or why we've determined that it's needed. And it goes on to say that employees experience a variety of caregiving obligations that interfere with work time, and that it's in the best interest to create a family and medical leave insurance program to provide to employees and other certain individuals compensated time off from work to care for and bond with a child during the first year after their birth or after arrival through adoption or foster care, to provide care for a family member who has a serious health condition, or to recover from an employee's or an individual's own serious health condition. And so the certain individuals described there, the other certain individuals, are those who are self-employed or independent contractors, and are typically not provided access to programs such as these, or we've seen in the past with unemployment insurance and some other programs that don't usually cover self-employed individuals. We've seen that as we're living through these unprecedented times, like a pandemic that is out of our control, that there are things that do affect our ability to work and bring income into our families. And so it's become more evident to us even now during this time that PFMLI could prove to be an invaluable asset to a self-employed individual or an independent contractor who finds themselves in a situation that would be covered by PFMLI and unable to work. But we do know that self-employed individuals have different circumstances and that it might not be the perfect fit for all individuals. But when we look at what is required, so we know that it's up to a 1% contribution rate, it's likely that the benefits that they would be eligible to receive if they have a situation to where it's needed they far surpass what they will be putting into the program. And so it's definitely something that individuals would want to think through if they want to participate or not. But we do think that it could be a great value to most families.
Thanks. And I have a couple of follow-ups from that. So you did mention unemployment insurance and that the PUA has been difficult for many self-employed individuals. How can we make sure that this program is run smoothly for everyone?
Yes, we have heard a little bit about these programs, both through the department, but also through personal experiences. And so we are working we're working to try to learn from both the successes and the challenges that PUA brought, both for the department and for self-employed individuals. And we also, this is another one of those areas that we would love to hear feedback from people. So if you have participated in the program, and if you have input of things that could have worked better, if it's something that we could implement, if it's a piece of advice or a lesson learned, we're taking those from both the department and individuals. So please do reach out. I believe we will share the email address as well, and it is available on the website, but we'd love to hear feedback on this.
Thank you, Caitlin. What about job protections? Are they included for self-employed individuals?
Yeah, the job protections in the statute are particular to an employee and an employer relationship. And so we don't see those job protections applying to self-employed individuals in any way, at least according to the law and what is required.
Thank you. Can you define what job protections are, just real quick? Like, what does it mean to be protected? And just, or I can if you'd like.
You can. That would be
Okay.
great. Or maybe Kelly could as well. Okay. But yes, Lily, you can do that because I don't think I will provide a great.
So the word job protection just simply means that you can't be fired or demoted or retaliated against if you choose to take paid family and medical leave for a qualifying purpose. So an example is you are, you give birth, you are pregnant, you give birth, you take time, you are eligible, you tell your employer you follow all the rules, and then they say you're fired. That's one example. There's lots of examples. Of course, there are details, but what it really means to have job protection is not just that you're paid for your time off, but that your employer can't fire, demote you, or retaliate against you. And of course, for employed folks, you are mostly your own employer. And I have a question. So Caitlin, if they start contributing in January of 2022, can they start taking, for self-employed individuals, can they start taking benefits in 2023? Do they have to contribute in 2022?
Yeah, so we're still working through all of that in the do they have to. But what we do see as the benefit, so if someone does choose to elect initially and contribute during 2022, that would be the way so that an individual could have the full amount of benefits available to them if they needed to take leave in 2023. So if someone waits until 2023 to elect or later, they will have the contributions that they've put in are what will be a part of their base year or their alternative base year. And so in order for an individual to have their full amount of benefits that would potentially be available with that look back, they would want to start contributing in 2022 if they anticipate a need for leave in 2023.
Thank you. And we have a great question here that I am going to ask Lois. So I think there's some questions about how it works. So if people, why would people contribute to the fund first if they're not allowed to take the time until a year later? Since this is a new program, how does that work? So somebody asked, what are the benefits to starting contributing in 2022 if you can't take the time?
It's a very good question, and it has to do with how benefits are calculated. Benefits are calculated by looking back at the last year. We call that the base year. There is a situation where we could tweak it a little bit and call it an alternate base year, but you have to go back in time and look at how much you made in this population in self-employment income, and did you make contributions to this program based on that? If so, then we'll use that amount that you made last year to determine what your benefits will be today when you make your claim. And so if you didn't contribute last year, we don't have anything to develop a calculation upon for your benefit. So it is good to contribute for the year before you have a need to file a claim, so that there is enough wages or income, depending on your status, upon which to base your benefit calculations.
Thank you. And a follow-up from that. So will there be back pay if there's a need to take family or medical leave in 2022 and they've contributed that year?
Fair question, but no. The law says that benefits cannot be paid until 2023, and that's for time taken in 2023 and beyond, not for any leave time taken before January 1, 2023.
So what I'm hearing you say is two things. The first is that this is a brand new program, and the way that insurance programs like this run across the country and world is often that we all put our money, we pool it together like a giant bank account, and then when we need it, we each take a piece out like other types of insurance. And because this is brand new, we have to pool all of our money, put our money together into one account essentially to be able to use in the future. So for 2022, that's what's happening, is we're pooling our money together as employers and employees, and self-employed people can choose to join in and pool their money and then use it later, or they cannot. So no one can take time until 2023. So that's one thing I'm hearing you say. And then here's the next thing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that in general, even if it was many, many years into the program and we already had that big pot of money in the bank for people to use when they need their time off, we would still need self-employed individuals to give us, to join in early for two reasons. One, because we need a record of how much money they've made, right, their income, so that we can estimate how much money they will receive in benefits, because it is based on how much money you made previously. And so we need that information. And also because for self-employed individuals, we need to learn about, if you are not, so one of the things we want to avoid is that you have not put into the program, just like car insurance or renter's insurance. If your car gets broken into, you can't buy the insurance the day it gets broken into. You need to have it beforehand so that that car insurance agency has your information. They understand what kind of car it was, what was in it, what you've paid. So very similarly, here you have to be in the program before you can use the benefits. So I believe that that's all accurate, Lois.
Yes, everything that you said was a very good description. And it works that way for everyone, that we're always going to need the prior year's information in order to help you get your benefits that you need now. And so both employees, we use that calculation, and self-employed as well. And yes, it all gets pulled together as you described, and it's available then for everyone when they need it.
Thank you. And I realize that we're at time. So thank you all for your questions. I want to remind you that we were not able to answer them all tonight, but we are recording them and this And so we will take them into consideration, and we're just getting started. Dean, it's all you.
Thank you so much, Lily and Lois and Caitlin and all of those that were able to provide answers to our attendees today. And so just kind of a quick reminder, today's self-employed town hall was recorded. So if you'd like to go back and watch or share, please feel free to do so. It will be posted on our PFMLI webpage under the Town Halls tab by the end of this week. This is our final session that we have scheduled at this time, but we are in the process of planning more as we continue to build this PFMLI program. You'll also have additional opportunities to provide input. As Lois has mentioned, we've already started posting some draft administrative rules on our website, so make sure to go over and check those out and provide feedback to us on those. And then you'll also have an opportunity during the formal rulemaking process really throughout the course of next year. So please continue to look for emails regarding not only any future PFMLI town halls, but also those emails pertaining to our administrative rules process. And we are always taking feedback. Caitlin had asked, please provide it if you always looking for help. So if you think of something else, please do not hesitate to reach out. You can submit those at paidfamilyandmedicalleave@oregon.gov. It is the email address that has been posted in the chat. So feel free to provide us with any feedback, comments, concerns, or anything, as we continue to develop this program. And then also don't forget to sign up for PFMLI updates. So with that concludes tonight's session. We really appreciate everyone that was able to attend this evening. As again, we've captured all of your feedback, and thank you so much for your time. And so that concludes this evening's. And again, thank you, panelists, for being with us this evening.